Well, welcome back to episode 11, crazy, of One Audacious Move. As you guys might know, I like to start off my weeks by filling out this life in weeks board. Another week went by since the last episode of this podcast, another chance at living my life to the fullest, living the life that I feel called to live, the life that I want to live. And sometimes I feel like I just want to fill that out on camera because maybe you don't have one of these boards. Maybe you don't think about life the same as I do, but for some reason you're listening to this podcast. And this is just kind of bringing you into my world of how I see the world. You know, when I talk to my best friends or my wife, we always talk about how I have this acute awareness of the movement of time. And I kind of refer to it a lot of the times as haunting me, this awareness that time is moving. But as much as it is a curse, it's also a blessing because it makes me truly sit down and think as often as I remember, which at a minimum is a week. Sometimes it's a lot more than that, daily or, every a couple hours thinking about what I'm doing with my time or my life. But I just want to be doing this, to bring you into my world of how I see time moving. And regardless of if you think of it or not, like me, time is moving. And our time is limited here. And our time is limited with what we can do with our time. It's kind of a weird way of saying that, but you have a limited amount of time that you can actually enact the things that you feel called to doing, the things that bring you life, the things that you feel like you should be doing while you're here on this earth. And so even if for a split second, I get you to think about the fact that your life is moving probably a lot quicker than you think, because mine sure is. And I'm very aware of it too. That would be a win for sure. So there's a Stoic philosopher, his name is Seneca. And a long time ago, he said, not verbatim, but he said that it's not that life is short. It's that we waste our time in life. And that's what makes it feel short. We don't do what we know that we should be doing. We're not aware of the fact that time is moving. And so again, that is the blessing of my life, is that while time is moving just as fast for me as everybody else, I'm watching it as it goes by. I'm watching as I move through time. And I kind of just want to start this episode with that notion that time is moving. Are you stopping today while you're listening to me talk, wherever you're listening to me talk, and thinking about the fact that your life is moving probably faster than you want it to? I think there's a pretty big consensus out there that most of us want time to slow down. And so what are you going to do about that? Are you still going to be making the excuses or living the life that you're living in the way that you don't want to be living it? Or are you going to do something about it? Or if you are living the life that brings you life, are you making the most of it? Are you enjoying it? Do you have peace amidst knowing that you have a beautiful, good life and you're doing what you feel called to do? Because if you're doing what you feel called to do, but you don't have peace, that's a sign that there's something else going on inside of you that isn't external by any means. It's something internal that you probably need to become aware of the root cause of and work on that, because your life has given you what you should be doing. But in light of this whole idea of time moving, I do want to start with one question and ask you, what is something that you could take one audacious move on this week in your life? What is something you could take a bold risk on, a leap of faith, whether it's a phone call, an email, a decision, leaving something, going and traveling, starting something new, investing in that class, whatever it might be, starting the hobby, doing something scary that you've always dreamed of doing? What's one tiny step, maybe not in actually doing that thing, but locking yourself into maybe doing that one day? Is it purchasing a ticket or signing up for a race? Is it, taking one small step to call up somebody that is affluent in a certain field that you've been aspiring to get into? Or if you're wanting to become an entrepreneur, but you don't know how, or you're wanting to quit your 9 to 5, but you don't know how, or you're wanting to change jobs, maybe you can just get that little jump start by talking to somebody about it. So what is one audacious move, regardless of where you're at, regardless of if you're an entrepreneur and you make your own schedule, or if you got the 9 to 5 and you're going home to a house full of kids? What is something that you can do with your life today that you can enact this week that's just a tiny little step forward? Because sometimes we don't think that the tiny little steps are worth doing because we're looking at the big picture, and it can be overwhelming sometimes whenever we look at the big picture. We think that we had to have all of our ducks in a row, have everything figured out. But the truth is that having everything figured out, quote unquote, which actually isn't real, is just a bunch of tiny little small decisions along the way that any successful person that you look up to in your life has done at some point or another. They've done it when it's lonely. They've done it when it's quiet. They've done it when nobody's watching. They put the work in because it's right for them. And so maybe the work for you is maybe just making a decision or making the phone call or stepping onto the treadmill or getting out and going on a run or picking up the weights and getting over the fear of going in there, just to name a few like health examples. Maybe it's applying for the job. Wherever you're at, I'm sure something is coming to your head of a move that you can make. I would love to hear about one tiny audacious move that you made this week. If you're listening to this episode, DM me and let me know on One Audacious Move on Instagram. Would love to connect with you and even hear that you're listening to this. And so thank you for listening to these every week. So episode 11, guys, I want to talk about something that I committed to doing last week, or an idea surrounding what I committed doing last week, and something that happened along the way amidst that recommitment to something that was kind of a buried dream of mine that I resurfaced. And amidst tackling that thing, I kind of had some adversity. So all of that sounds really ambiguous, esoteric, but let me let you into what happened. So last week, I recommitted to doing YouTube. And so I've kind of haphazardly done YouTube and created YouTube videos over the last 5 or 6 years. I probably have just over 100 videos total, but I never really have taken it seriously. And I call taking it seriously in my own brain as posting consistently, having a plan for where I'm going with it. Now I have 2 YouTubes. I got one for the podcast, One Audacious Move, and I have my Stanton Giles YouTube. And so the bandwidth for where I can create is a lot more. And I'm very motivated to do so. The desire to do YouTube has been in me for a long time, and it hasn't gone away, but it's really hard. Not a lot of people, even though we see a lot of people doing it on YouTube, actually make the cut. But I was determined to be that person that would make the cut, that would actually stick through and be consistent now. And so what I did was I went and recorded 5 different YouTube videos. I scripted them out. I made sure that I said everything that I wanted to in them. I worked on them for a few days. And then in one shot, I sat down and I recorded them. It took me a couple of hours. I recorded all of these YouTube videos, messing up a bunch of the time, trying to say everything I wanted to say in the script. I recorded it. Long story short, I had it basically edited. I was going to come in here, upload it this morning, and I had all the edit done. I was going to export it, upload it. But one thing that I'm pretty bad about doing is file storage and preserving the file. If you're not a videographer, taking it off the card that I'm recording to, and then actually offloading that onto a hard drive to protect it so that, if I use that card again, I'm not deleting that footage whenever I clear the card for the next shoot that I'm doing. And so that's unfortunately exactly what happened to me. Is I went and did a favor for a friend and shot a little promo video for their company here in Denver yesterday morning on Mother's Day. And I went in to use the same card that I recorded all 5 of these YouTube videos on, that I was actually editing off of, which is a big no-no. I should have been editing off a hard drive and saved it. But just because of how fast I've been moving through life, I just do what's the most convenient. So I was editing off of all this, ran out of space on the card, and just haphazardly deleted one file so I could have enough space to record this promo video for my friend. And what would you know? The one file I deleted was the one with all of those hours of scripting and YouTube and editing and all of that stuff. And so if you know anything about editing, can't exactly go back and just re-record it and plug it into what you've edited so far with B-roll and titles and fades and color and stuff. And it's not going to be exactly the same. So I kind of have to, if I want to redo this, it's all lost right now. I have to start over. I was planning on posting a YouTube video today and then having 4 weeks of YouTube videos planned out for the next month or so to make sure I was being consistent. But here I am showing up, how it is starting Monday mornings. I'm wanting to start strong, and bam, I go in here to export it, upload it, and it's gone. And that was pretty rough. It definitely made me angry to the point where I didn't even actually get mad. I started laughing. It was like one of those hysterical angers where you're like so perturbed by what's happening. Can't help but just react with like laughter because of how ridiculous the situation is. Like in my head, if I'm called to be doing these things, should this not just naturally flow out of me? Shouldn't, as they say, the universe just open the door for me? As Julia Cameron says, jump and the net will appear. Well, it felt like I fell right through the net whenever I put in all that work, recommitted to doing YouTube, walked in here to upload the first week, and I had deleted the file because of my own negligence. It was my own fault. But it's moments like that where the true crossroads of your intent and your desire really bubbles up to the surface, to where it truly is a crossroads. Because when I'm sitting here after having put all that work in, talking about it on the podcast last week, and then deciding to come in here, export it before I even record this Monday morning for this podcast, and it's gone. You really stop between two different paths right there. And you're left with your own decisions, your own voices in your head, your own excuses, your own push, your own pull, whatever, motivation, discipline. It all comes to the surface, and you have a choice to make when those things happen, whenever vicissitudes happen in your life, when roadblocks come up and they disrupt the course that you believe that you are on because you are doing the right thing. Oh, I've been listening to One Audacious Move. I've been taking audacious actions in my life. It should all go perfectly now. Life is perfect. Everything should go easy now that I'm, stepping into who I said I was going to be. And I don't necessarily think that to be the case, because here I am on Monday morning, again, going back to the crossroads. I'm going to be using that word a few times here, so just bear with me. But I'm left with all of these different decisions I need to make. And there's really two that are at the forefront. And it's either A, am I going to succumb to what happened here? Am I just going to accept this as defeat and kind of figure this is, the universe telling me that this just isn't for me? I'm not meant to be doing YouTube. This is, my path, that I'm not able to be organized enough or, have what it takes. If I haven't been consistent the last 5 or 6 years, what makes me think I can now? This seems like the writing on the wall that maybe I should just stop. Have you ever felt that way about something in your life where, you finally take the step, you're doing the thing that gets you excited, but that initial excitement goes away, the motivation fades, you're kind of left there in the quiet, kind of in this void. Nobody's around. It's just you having done a ton of work, and you're not seeing a lot of fruition from it. You actually might be seeing the negative of it. You're not seeing any fruition at all. You're seeing setbacks, and you're seeing, arguments with a spouse, or maybe your health going down, or you're spending a lot of time doing something. And there's all of these things in your life that are coming up that just seem like roadblocks to you enacting your dream, that seem like roadblocks to you living a full life and being who you should be in this world, who you're called to be, who that inner voice that we talk about is calling you to be. But then the other path at this crossroads that we can take, these two paths we can take, we can either succumb to it, or we can see this as a test of how much we actually want this. Because if we continue to move forward amidst that adversity, amidst what's happened to us, we have the opportunity to become a more powerful, purpose-filled version of ourselves. Does that make sense? Through that adversity, no matter how big or small it is, we get to see a true version of ourselves. Not just this true version of ourselves that's beautiful, but this true version of ourselves that is human, that is in this world dealing with the ups and the downs of life that happen amidst you having a dream. Because just because you have a dream doesn't mean it's all going to go according to plan. And I think any successful person can say that. And so I have to hold on to that thought of, I want to be successful in regards to what I feel called to do in life. But that doesn't mean it's going to be an easy road. So do I choose to succumb to this? Or is this actually where the rubber meets the road? And this is where most people quit. This is where most people don't do YouTube. This is where most people would choose that path where they succumb to it because it's easier. And you're able to fall back into the comfort of knowing, hey, at least I tried. And you're able to go back to that comfortable version of yourself that is lonely and quietly living a life of quiet desperation, pleading. There's something in you pleading for you to take that risk again, but you succumbed to the comfort. And I don't think you actually want that deep down. And just because we choose to do something doesn't mean that our soul, us, the true version of ourselves, actually wants that. I think that the true version of you understands that you're human, understands that you have this conviction, which is maybe a better way of saying dream. You have this conviction that no matter what happens, the ups and the downs of the external of your life, you have a compass inside of you that is pushing you to do something. And that's what you hold on to. That's what you fix your eyes on and you keep walking toward. And I'm preaching this as much to myself. I can see my reflection in the lens of the camera right now. I'm preaching this as much to myself as I am to you, because I need to go and re-record all of these videos after that. I had a big day planned out of other things that I was going to be working on that I already had this done. I was feeling good, confident. Stanton Giles waking up Monday morning. Lo and behold, this happens. But I have to pivot. I have a conviction that this is something that I must do and I'm going to stay with it, even though it's lonely, even though it's a lot more work, even though it's not going the way that I want it to go. But there's something in me, and it's something that I can't name, but the closest I can get to calling it is a calling or a voice or just this pull that I have that's pulling me to just overcome it. And I think that's something that's really important about convictions. You might have heard people talk about the difference between push and pull. But as I said, I'm pulled to this. Something is dragging me toward it, regardless of how comfortable it is or how hard it is. It's dragging me through the trenches and the grass and the rocks, and I'm bumping along the way as I get pulled toward this thing that is calling me in life. I'm not necessarily pushing toward it. Now, sometimes it does take motivation, but motivation is push. You're like pushing against something in you, whether it's your own tendencies, your own energy levels. Motivation fades. And so pull is always better than push, because pull is something that is deep and internal and true, but push is going to be something that fades. Push can't stand the test of time. Hopefully that differentiation between push and pull makes sense to you. But I feel pulled to do these things in my life. You know, one of my best friends, Boomer, we have a therapist, and he is like an elite athlete, ultra marathon runner. His name's Jonathan Den Hartog. And during our sessions, he makes, and honestly, it's the perfect analogy. He talks about running almost in every session. And I don't say that in a bad way at all, because it's, again, the perfect analogy for the race of life. And I'm definitely becoming more aware of the fact that it's a perfect analogy as I've been getting into running. And so between now and next Monday, when I make the next episode, this is pretty cool to be saying this right now, but I will be running my first marathon. And I've trained really hard over the last 10 weeks, and I've learned a lot about running. I know that there's people out there that forgot more about running than I know. They're so good at it. I don't really know anything, but I have been learning a lot. And I have been learning why Jonathan, during those sessions, is always making the analogy or the metaphor of running to kind of equate with whatever we're talking about during a session, because running is a really good example of how we move through life. And I've really experienced that over the last 10 weeks of training for this marathon. And, you know, they say when you're running a marathon that you run the first 10 miles with your legs, you run the next 10 miles with your head, and you run those last 6.2 with your heart. A lot of people say when you get to mile 20, that's when the real race begins, because, you know, everything inside of you is screaming at you. Your physicality, everything inside of you physiologically is telling you to stop. You're in a ton of pain. I've never even run 20 miles. The furthest I've run is 18, and that about killed me like a week and a half ago. So we'll see how this marathon goes. But it's going to be a question of, do I have the grit to push through that? Am I going to, at that crossroads, choose to listen to what is telling me to go find comfort and stop pushing myself through all of this adversity? Or am I going to push through to get to the end of that race, because I know that there's a reason I signed up to do this. I know what I've been training for. I know what's been calling me to do this thing. And I'm going to choose that path. I'm going to go this way, but I'm going to choose to stick to the goal. I'm going to choose to keep running in life regardless of how I'm feeling. There's something pulling me in life. And so is there something pulling you in life? There should be something pulling you in life. And if you don't feel pulled to do something in life, I can promise you one thing, that it's inside of you, that there is something that will pull you to do it. And the reason I know that to be true is because you are a uniquely made human with a certain set of skills that has lived a life that is completely different than anybody else's. Even though it might look similar on paper, you have your own set of worldviews and your own set of ways that you've gone through this world, the way that you've been raised, the way that you've lived your life, the circumstances that you've been going through, the hand you've been dealt. And because of that, because of all these things that have happened in your life, you bring to the table something that's beautiful and unique. And maybe along the way, you've stopped listening to that. Maybe since you were a kid, maybe somebody spoke into you in a negative way that made you suppress something that was a true part of you that would have grown and bloomed into something beautiful as you got older. But regardless of what happened, if that faded or if it stayed with you, it is still inside of you. And so if you can find out what that is through separating yourself from the noise, sitting in silence, giving yourself space to do something other than the busy things that are screaming the loudest in your life, you might start to see what makes you come to life. And I'm not just saying that I'm a real person. And I'd say over the last few years of taking life even more seriously, self-discovery, doing my best with figuring things out. And I don't have anything figured out, but what I have figured out is that when I have created space and gotten away from the noise, I truly have heard what makes me come to life more. And it's almost just like a law of physics that whenever you create space, I don't even know how. It's like I don't even understand how gravity works or things like that, or momentum or inertia or all these things in the physical world that have these physical laws. It's like if you create the space, I can't explain it to you, but for some reason, you start to come out. Your true version of yourself just starts to permeate as almost like a physical law of how things operate within us as humans. If we can get away from the things that are screaming the loudest, if you do that consistently, you will hear something. And that something is probably you. And that something that you hear is something that is going to pull you toward it the more that you give it space. So the more pull you have in life, the more aware you are of the things that bring you life, of who you are, what your calling is in life, the less you need push in your life, and the push fades. And that's why so many people stop doing certain things because A, they haven't created space to figure out what they actually want to be doing. They're going based off of maybe what the world is telling them to do, and they're pushing and they think that they have it figured out of what they want to do with this life, and they lose steam. The motivation fades. They can't keep going because that wasn't a true version of themselves. So I'm not saying I have everything figured out. I'm only 33 years old, but I am trying hard. I'm desperately trying with my life. And I am dealing with this very human form of myself that has low energy and mood swings and lack of motivation and sometimes even a lack of pull, confusion about where I'm headed in life. But I still do my best with the time that I'm given. And I think that's just part of the human experience. And I'm sure you're going through something similar too. And if you're not, I invite you into the arena with me, this arena of life. This sign right here is the quote from Theodore Roosevelt, the man in the arena. I invite you to be the human in the arena with me and take the punches and bleed and figure this thing out alongside of me, one audacious move at a time. And that's all we can do because we're not here to live perfect lives. We're here to live life. And if we're taking bold moves and bold risk in life, we're living life. We're aware. We're acutely aware of time moving. And I hope you are too. I hope that's something that brings you life, is thinking about what can I do with my life? What stone can I turn over today to enact this beautiful side of myself that no matter what happens in my life, I'll laugh it off and I'll be pulled toward it regardless because I know I'm here to do something great. I know I'm here for a purpose. Guys, thank you so much for listening to this episode of One Audacious Move. If you haven't yet, I would appreciate more than you know if you were to pull out your phone and just hit 5 stars on that. That helps with rankings. That helps for more people to see this. And obviously, I'd like for more people to listen to this podcast. And so thank you for listening, though. It means a ton that you've tuned in, listened this far. I don't even know how long I've been talking, but I hope these words have resonated with you, with where you're at in life. You might have a very different life than me. You might not be a filmmaker, a podcaster, an entrepreneur. You might be working 9 to 5 with 18 kids and be in a very different situation than me. But I do know we have one connection point, and it's that A, you're listening to this. So that means you care, and B, you're human. And I think that is a more common bond than any of those adjectives, those labels that I put on the front of who I am and who you are. Our common bond is that we're human and we're going through this life together and we're experiencing very similar things as we go through. So once again, thanks for listening to this episode, guys. I will see you on episode 12 of One Audacious Move next week, having run a marathon. That's going to be pretty cool. See you guys next week.